For centuries, the Sith tore themselves apart with greed, arrogance, and betrayal. Their own ambition was their undoing, leaving them vulnerable even when their numbers rivaled the Jedi. In 1032 BBY, during the final days of the Ruusan War, Darth Bane recognized that the true enemy of the Sith was not the Jedi, but the corrupted code and culture that had infected his own order. Bane's rebellion against their own code was ruthless. He wiped out the Brotherhood of Darkness, erasing every other Sith and establishing the infamous Rule of Two. This act preserved the Sith and set in motion a secret lineage that would shape galactic events for generations, culminating in the rise of the Sith during the Clone Wars. But the question remains, what drove the Sith to such a desperate point? And why did it take such a drastic solution to save them? At their peak, the ancient Sith rivaled the Jedi not just in numbers, but in sheer ambition and reach. Their order sprawled across countless star systems, building temples and academies where Sith hopefuls learned the dark arts. Yet beneath this appearance of unity, their core philosophy was already sowing the seeds of their undoing. The Sith valued individual power above all else, teaching that strength came from conflict and that only the most ruthless deserved to rule. Apprentices were encouraged to challenge their masters, and no leader's position was ever truly secure. This relentless pursuit of dominance bred an atmosphere of constant suspicion and betrayal. The result was a cycle of infighting that weakened the Sith from within. As their empire expanded, the competition for power became even more ruthless. Betrayal was not just a risk, it was an expectation built into the very structure of the Order. This philosophy, while empowering on a personal level, made it impossible for the Sith to act as a unified force. The Jedi-Sith War, which raged 1,000 years before the Clone Wars, exposed the full extent of this flaw. The Sith, under the banner of the Brotherhood of Darkness, commanded massive fleets and armies and outnumbered the Jedi. Yet their leaders remained divided by ambition. Some even struck deals with the Jedi if it meant undermining a rival. This internal chaos slowed their military advances and allowed the Jedi to exploit their divisions, turning what could have been a decisive victory into a prolonged and costly struggle. The Battle of Ruusan in 1032, before the Battle of Yavin, marked the final, devastating consequence of this self-destructive cycle. Under Lord Kaan, the Brotherhood of Darkness made a last stand against the Jedi. Kaan attempted to consolidate control, but many Sith under his command resented his authority and believed they deserved to rule. Even as Jedi forces closed in, the Sith continued to scheme against one another. In a desperate attempt to seize victory, Lord Kaan unleashed the Thought Bomb, a catastrophic weapon that annihilated not only the Jedi armies, but also most of the remaining Sith, wiping out the Brotherhood of Darkness in a single moment. The Sith were brought to the brink of extinction, not by the Jedi's superior strength, but by their own refusal to temper their ambition. This pattern of failure was not unique to Ruusan. Each time they amassed enough power to challenge the Jedi, their own infighting sabotaged their efforts. Over and over, this dynamic tipped the balance in the Jedi's favor. Jedi archives from this era describe the Sith as victims of their own greed, a phrase that captured the tragedy of a once mighty order undone by its defining trait. The Sith's inability to coexist posed a greater threat to their survival than any enemy. Their grand ambitions were undercut by a culture of mistrust so deeply rooted that lasting victory was impossible. If the Sith were ever to overcome the Jedi and seize control of the galaxy, they would have to find a way to break free from this cycle. Yet even in the midst of this chaos, there were hints that another path might exist. Long before the disaster at Ruusan, a Sith Lord had recognized the fatal flaw in their order. His ideas were radical and largely ignored, but the vision he offered would quietly persist, waiting for a time when the Sith were desperate enough to listen. Darth Bane's rise marked a turning point for the Sith. Emerging as the lone survivor after the Brotherhood of Darkness destroyed itself at Ruusan, Bane saw that the old ways had failed. The Brotherhood's attempt to unify the Sith through compromise and collective power had only diluted their ambition and left them vulnerable. Lord Khan's leadership, meant to foster strength, instead led to chaos and the Order's near extinction. Bane understood that the Sith could not survive if they simply returned to the traditions that had doomed them. He sought a new path, one that would enforce discipline and focus, drawing from the warnings and philosophy preserved in Darth Revan's holocron. Bane dismantled what remained of the Brotherhood, rejecting the idea of a large, fractious order. Instead, he built his solution around a single, uncompromising rule drawn from Revan's teachings. The Rule of Two. No more, no less, one to embody power, the other to crave it. This was not just a slogan. It was a radical restructuring of the Sith's very foundation. Under Bane's system, there would be no sprawling armies or competing warlords. Only two Sith existed at any time, a master and an apprentice. The master held all the power and knowledge, while the apprentice's ambition was sharpened by the promise of succession. The Rule of Two weaponized the very ambition that had once destroyed the Sith. The apprentice was not just permitted, but required to one day challenge and kill the master, claiming the mantle of Dark Lord. In this way, each generation of Sith became stronger, as the weak were culled and knowledge was preserved and refined. The cycle of rivalry was narrowed to a single, focused relationship, eliminating the chaos that had plagued the old Sith. Bane's system also demanded secrecy and patience. With only two Sith at any time, the Order could vanish from the eyes of the Jedi, working in the shadows to rebuild their strength. This underground existence allowed them to escape detection and interference, giving the Sith the time they needed to adapt and grow. The Rule of Two forced the Sith to abandon open warfare and instead master the arts of manipulation, deception, and long-term planning. Bane's vision was not just about survival, but about creating a lineage that would one day be capable of toppling the Jedi from within. This secretive approach laid the groundwork for the Sith's eventual return. Centuries later, Darth Sidious, drawing directly from Bane's legacy, would exploit the hidden strength of the Rule of Two to orchestrate the fall of the Jedi and the rise of the Empire. Sidious and his apprentice, Darth Vader, were the products of generations of careful succession, each embodying the distilled power and ambition that Bane had intended. Their ability to manipulate galactic events from the shadows was a direct result of the system Bane had put in place, showing how the Rule of Two transformed the Sith from a fractured order into a patient, lethal force. The Rule of Two did not erase the Sith's ambition or hunger for power, but it gave those drives a structure that turned their greatest weakness into their most enduring strength. By focusing all Sith knowledge and power into a single line, Bane ensured that the Order could survive even when the galaxy believed them extinct. The Sith endured in secrecy, evolving across centuries, and ultimately changed the fate of the galaxy. The Rule of Two was not just a new rule, it was a transformation of the Sith's very identity, one that ensured their survival long after their apparent destruction. In the end, Bane's radical vision forced the Sith to confront and overcome their greatest flaw, setting the stage for a new era defined by patience, cunning, and the relentless pursuit of power. Bane's Rule of Two was more than a response to chaos. It was the foundation for over a millennium of hidden plotting. This system allowed the Sith to operate in secrecy, patiently shaping galactic events until the time was right. The ultimate result was the rise of Darth Sidious, whose mastery of Bane's philosophy led directly to the fall of the Jedi Order through Order 66 and the Sith's control of the Senate, as seen in Revenge of the Sith. Sidious's triumph stands as proof that Bane's vision achieved its intended outcome. Which moment in the Rule of Two's long history surprised you the most? Did Bane's ruthless solution redeem or doom the Sith? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and force push the notification button.